To order. Welcome to meeting number 3 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of September 23rd, 2020. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, and the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. With regard to the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether or not they are participating virtually or in person. So today our committee is meeting on its study on the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on women, and I'll make a few comments for the benefit of our new witnesses. At the beginning, you'll each have 5 minutes to make your speech. I will recognize you by name, and when you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. And the interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting, so you can choose at the bottom of your screen, floor, English, or French. And when speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. And when you're not speaking, please have your mic on mute. So our first panel will be 1 hour, and the second panel will be 30 minutes. And then we'll go in camera, and we'll have to switch to the other Zoom link, and that will take a few minutes. But without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our witnesses who will begin our discussions. And we have today Penny Wise, who is the president of 3M Canada, Mr. Kevin McCready, who is the CEO and Chief Investment Officer for AGF Management Limited, and Leah Nord, Senior Director of the Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth, Council for Women's Advocacy from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And then we have Vicki Smallman, who is with the Canadian Labour Congress. So we'll start off at the beginning with Penny.
Actually, Madam Chair, I'll lead this morning. And thank you.
All right.
Madam Speaker, just one, it's a lot of echo. Sorry for interrupting. It's a lot of echo in the voice.
Okay. Can we have the technical people address? Very good. Go ahead, Mr. McCready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. It is a pleasure to be here today. My name is Kevin McCready, and I am the CEO and CIO of AGF Management Limited. I'm also the co-chair of the Canadian Chamber's Council for Women's Advocacy. I am joined today by fellow co-chair Penny Wise, who is the president of 3M Canada, and Leah Nord from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. The Canadian Chamber is the voice of Canadian business. We represent 200,000 businesses across the country, across sectors, and across sizes. Our network consists of 450 chambers of commerce and boards of trade, alongside over 400 corporate members and an equal number of association members. Earlier this year, the Canadian Chamber launched its inclusive growth campaign, including the Council for Women's Advocacy. Council is an executive table of men and women from across this country and across sectors, including the Chamber network. In the spring of this year, we needed to quickly pivot the Council's focus with the onset of the pandemic as we watched the disproportionately negative effects on women. This included nationwide lockdowns in March that immediately and drastically affected women-dominated sectors, including retail, nonprofit, salon services, etc. The women who were able to work from home as schools went online and childcare was curtailed, they had to deal with family in long-term care homes, and they had to deal with the brunt of other family and domestic responsibilities. It is well documented how their labor participation and utilization rates, not to mention mental health, have suffered. Recent labor force survey numbers do indicate solid progress, but these will swing, sway, and even ping pong over the winter months as we move in and out of the second and third waves and other hotspots across this country. Through the crisis, we have used emergency in any number of programs: the emergency wage subsidy, the emergency relief benefit, the emergency business account. We're here today to underscore the emergency vis-a-vis women in the workforce. We need to keep women in the workforce. We're here not only to talk about the urgency, we're here to provide solutions. The Council for Women's Advocacy has 5 key recommendations for the federal government that you, committee members, and your fellow parliamentarians need to do to provide emergency support for women through the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Excuse me, Madam Speaker. The witness is really garbled, and every time he speaks, there's a garble sound, and it comes through whether I use my headset or disconnect. So I'm thinking it's on your end.
Yes, we have the technical team trying to address it right now while we're continuing.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. McCready.
These recommendations cover the areas of childcare and schools and facilitating upskilling, reskilling, and job pivots for women. I will ask my colleague, Penny, to provide some details.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, committee members. The Council initially issued 5 recommendations in mid-August in advance of the school year. We expanded that to be 10 recommendations in advance of the speech from the throne to include some recovery-focused ideas. We, this week, have returned to our initial 5 recommendations for the urgency reasons Kevin just spoke to. Women need support now. In order to keep women in the workforce, we need to keep children in schools and daycares. While we welcome the federal government's announcements regarding national leadership and longer investments in childcare, we need action now focused on ensuring childcare capacity. Establish without delay an inclusive task force to focus on childcare support through the continued crisis. The task force can support data-driven and parent-focused decisions on whether it's provinces, territories, childcare providers, parents, and in what form funding, grants, or tax incentives, how that should flow. Those who receive funds will also need to be held accountable. Concretely, for example, earlier this week, at the Canadian Chamber's annual general meeting, there was a resolution passed entitled Childcare Credits for Small and Medium-Sized Businesses. It recommends that the Government of Canada permit owners of Canadian-controlled private corporations, CCCPs, receiving non-eligible dividend income to claim childcare expenses against that income. To permit CCPC owners receiving non-eligible dividend income to transfer childcare expenses to the higher income earner of a family. We are also asking for the federal government to continue to build on the safe restart transfers to ensure that schools and daycares remain open through the second waves across the country. Work with provinces, territories, and stakeholders on rapid testing turnaround times, alongside with other technology supports, including robust tracing. Our third recommendation regarding childcare, which also focuses on supporting female business owners and entrepreneurs, is to extend eligibility for the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy to include hiring in-home childcare so business owners can return to work. Female business owners continue to indicate that childcare is their #1 issue. These are some easy, practical, and incredibly helpful actions that the government could undertake now. Further, we have asked for the federal government to track and break down data for federal funding and programming for business in a way that it has been done for individuals, looking specifically at female-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. Ask questions regarding ratios of applications, rates of successful applications, timing for funding received, and adapted eligibility, funding, and programming accordingly going forward. Consult widely as this is done. Our final recommendations, and hopefully we will be able to elaborate on this further during the question period, is to earmark some of the recovery funding for upskilling and reskilling women, ensuring there is an intersectional lens and BIPOC focus. Appreciating this as a significant and groundbreaking undertaking, but critically important to start and start now. Thank you.
Very good. I understand that we are still having technical difficulties. The clerk has advised that we should suspend momentarily. Clerk, if you can verify, does that mean people just remain on the line until we fix it?
Yes, please just sit tight and we will work on this from our end. So we'll suspend now and we'll be back very shortly. Thank you.
Technical difficulties. Does Ms. Nord want to say anything from the Chamber of Commerce?
No, thank you, not at this
All right.
time.
Perfect. Then we'll go along to Ms. Smallman from the Canadian Labour Congress. You have 5 minutes.
All right, well, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of your discussion today. The CLC, as you know, is the largest labor organization in Canada, bringing together dozens of national and international unions, provincial and territorial federations of labor, and community-based labor councils to represent more than 3 million workers across the country. And more than half of these workers are women, many working in the sectors most devastated by this pandemic or finally recognized as essential to protecting the health and well-being of our communities. And it's difficult to capture in a brief 5 minutes the many ways that women workers and women's jobs have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. You've heard from others today about the disproportionate impact on women who've lost jobs or reduced their hours and income in order to care for children or other family members, and the pressures that are going to be sort of continuing through subsequent waves of the pandemic. I'd like to add that the hardest hit are low-wage and precarious workers and those who already face marginalization and discrimination. Black and Indigenous women, women of color, women with disabilities, migrants, and newcomers. While women bore the brunt of the job losses, they've also been on the front lines of this pandemic, doing the work that keeps our communities healthy, safe, fed, and supported. But the work in these essential sectors is often invisible, undervalued, and unrecognized, marked with poor working conditions, exposure to violence and harassment, and other health and safety risks, limited job security, and access to benefits, including paid sick leave. The pandemic brought many of these realities to the surface and brought new or greater risks and inequities, such as a higher risk of exposure to COVID-19 for those workers who are mostly Black and Indigenous women, women of color, migrants, and recent immigrants. Unlike other countries, women make up the majority of diagnosed COVID-19 cases in Canada, and more women than men have lost their lives. We also know that women have not benefited equally from the gradual reopening of the economy. And again, the most marginalized are the most impacted. And a key reason for the slow recovery is women's unpaid work, caring for children and family members. The pandemic has placed many women in a very impossible situation, and something has to give. So we see women's labor force participation set back more than 30 years. And unless we address some profound structural barriers, recovery from what many have dubbed the she-cession will be long and difficult. And among the most challenging of these barriers is women's unfair share of unpaid care work. This committee has an opportunity to make a strong case for a gender-responsive recovery aimed at restoring women's labor force participation, creating decent jobs and narrowing the gender wage gap, reducing and redistributing unpaid care work, and disaster-proofing our social safety net. Feminist recovery would center the needs of the most impacted and ensure no one is left behind. So we need a jobs plan that invests in the sectors where women work and in the services women and families rely on. That's the caring economy. Care is a vital part of Canada's social infrastructure and an economic generator. Quality public services and social infrastructure like childcare, elder care, and other social services can not only create decent jobs, they help boost labor force participation overall by reducing the burden of unpaid care work. But decades of austerity-driven fiscal policies and a market-based approach to the delivery of care have created inequities and gaps. Our economy is relying more than ever on women's unpaid labor and also on precarious, low-wage women workers, a disproportionate number of whom are racialized. Canada needs a care-focused solutions for the recovery, but we can't just apply Band-Aid solutions to a crisis that has been building for some time. That's why we're proposing, among other investments in childcare and healthcare and long-term care, a federal care economy commission to study, design, and implement a care strategy for Canada that would create a broad and inclusive labor market strategy to achieve high-quality, equitable care jobs, examine paid and unpaid care work, and develop a roadmap to meet the increasing demands for care, and reduce and redistribute women's unpaid care work by improving access to public care services for children, the elderly, and people living with disabilities. There's a lot more to discuss. I'm hoping we'll get to it in the question period. Just to say that, you know, from our point of view, our plan, which we put forward in our Forward Together campaign, is rooted in our way of doing things, and that means taking care of each other. Public investments in services, not austerity, are a key part of a robust response and a recovery that ensures our collective well-being. Thank you.
Very good. Now we are going to go into our first round of questions. So the way this works is each party gets 6 minutes, and I will try to be kind when I come to the end, but just a warning to the witnesses that I may say, and that's your time, and then we'll be moving on from there. So we're going to start our questioning with Ms. Sahota for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to all the witnesses for your presentation and for your time. I'm going to be asking the same question to Penny, Kevin, and Leah. So women were hit the hardest, and we've heard this many times by COVID-19 pandemic. From working in service industries that were ordered to be closed, workplaces closed up completely, or deciding to leave the workforce to take care of children and elderly. Of those who left the workforce, only about 20% of them are planning on returning to the workforce, with childcare being a big reason why. How have your organizations adjusted to this new reality, and what measures are you taking to work with those who had to leave to be at home?
Thank you for the question, MP. This is Penny Wise. It has been a very challenging time for all of us as we've moved through the pandemic, and certainly has, as you said, disproportionately affected women in the workplace. About a significant portion of the people who work at 3M Canada are women, and really proud of that proportion, the proportions that we have. A couple of comments is we have been working very hard on ensuring what we are calling flexibility. So for our employees who work from home, making sure that we are helping them plan their days, making sure they have the time to support their children, to support elder care, to support the kind of family care that they provide, to make sure that their workload is balanced and they still have time for themselves and for their families. So we've been working very hard on that, providing other additional supports around mental health as well as work-life balance in order to provide as much support as we can to people in the workforce. And I've attended more than my fair share of meetings where there have been additional co-workers who are younger, who have louder opinions than their parents potentially do during our meetings as well. And I think that is just a part of all of us participating in a pandemic economy. For our individuals who were not able to work from home because we have manufacturing across the country, again, we have promoted flexibility and making sure that we are helping people support when they need to stay home with children, when they can come into the office, making sure we have shift flexibility in order to provide that for people as well. So I think flexibility has been the key to what we have provided. Thank you.
Mr. McCready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I like Penny, or I should say different than Penny. I employ what I call knowledge workers for the most part. So when the pandemic hit, we were able to basically pick up an entire firm here across the provinces of 700 odd people, actually around the world, and move them home with maybe 5 or 6 people left within days. So we had that ability, and half our workforce is women. And one of the things we saw right away was that disproportionately our single mothers, even though we're in the knowledge industry, were struggling immensely, homeschooling children, taking on the domestic responsibilities, and then trying to fit into that schedule their own job. And we were able to work with them. We had timeouts built into the day where we schedule no internal meetings so mothers could try to deal with some of this at once. We provided a lot of direction on online tutoring services, things that could help them. But the struggle, even though we're in the knowledge industry, was so apparent. And we can take care of our folks. We can be flexible about when they can work, how they come back, and then even go to the two parent families. Disproportionately, the domestic work, the homeschooling, the lack of summer camps fell on those women, even though they were in a family situation with a husband. And we saw that stress. And think about trying to deal with keeping pace with your male colleagues while you're saying, I can't take this meeting because I have to get this child's assignment uploaded, right? And so we preached empathy. We preached work with, partner with your teammates, right? Put yourself in everyone else's shoes throughout this. And then I go to the people that we contract that work with us, consultants, accountants who are small business owners. They're single practitioners. And when they had to go home and take care of their kids, they lost their businesses. Essentially could not work. And now we're in a situation where even then we're every other day, or someone in their class has been tested positive and the whole class comes home. And it's impossible for those women to really try to get their careers back. Some of them have lost it all, and so I think our small business owners, our small entrepreneurs, our single mothers, and Canada has disproportionately a number of small business owners who are single mothers. So I think for us, we can be empathetic and be in the knowledge industry and take care of everyone and we can understand it, but don't underestimate the burden that I think has fallen on many of these women and the mental health issues that are yet to come because of this burden. And I think we are going to unfortunately be in a second, third wave of this as we get to a place of, a vaccine.
And that's your time. And so nous allons maintenant, Monsieur.
Mr. Serré, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the 3 witnesses for their statements. Thank you for the work you do for women's equality and for the entire economy. It's very important what we're doing here for COVID-19. My first question is for Penny Wise. Penny.
And thank you for the work that you do with 3M. As you know, our government has invested a lot in investment in social sciences, engineering, apprenticeship for women, construction trades. Since 2015, we've established the Department of Women and Gender Equality, and we've added about $11.3 million to support projects that look at women in unrepresented fields. So I wanted to get your feedback here on measures that you think the government should be considering to ensure women have equal and fair opportunity to succeed in the STEM fields and the fields that we just mentioned in research.
Again, thank you for the question. I think that the best way to answer the question that you had is to give you a personal experience. So my daughter is 23 years old and has just graduated from university. She has a degree in biotechnology and biochemistry, and it is viewed as an unusual thing that she has a science degree instead of a more traditional female-focused degree, which it shouldn't be. So that's one aspect. But for her, you know, I always view, as we move forward in the world, as we move forward and we bring women's issues forward, the opportunity for us to pass the baton to the next generation and make sure we've moved women's issues forward and ahead is absolutely critical. And I am concerned at this point, given how many women have left the workforce, how so many of the jobs that have been affected are in the service industries that women have taken on, that they still aren't moving into some of these job pivots and areas. That is affecting us and taking women's issues backwards a generation, not forwards. And I want to be able to pass that on. But as we think about pivoting, we need to really help in our education system, making sure that we are encouraging young women to try science, to do apprenticeships, to look at some of the opportunities in high growth areas or different industries where they haven't traditionally looked, and how do we help people pivot to those particular industries. We also, at 3M Canada, we are a partner with Skills Ontario, and some of the young women who participate in Skills Ontario, it's a very small percentage. So our goal is, how do we encourage more young women to participate and more people to get into the skills? And I think that's the challenge for us, to pass the baton forward, to make sure women aren't slipping back, but also to encourage them into some of these different areas. A longer term solution, but again, as I mentioned, we need to start that now.
Thank you, Mrs. Wise. My second question to Vicky Smallman, and thank you for all the work you do on human rights and advocacy. Very, very important that we need to continue this not only in Canada but across the world. As you know, the UN referred to the shadow pandemic here of violence against women very, very strongly. So we, as a government, in early March and April, we provided $50 million to women's shelters. And we just recently provided another $50 million for shelters and sexual assault centers. I received calls and dealing with my local Horizons women's shelter in West Nipissing and in Sudbury, and they're very, very thankful. That really helped them to carry the extra workload and costs during COVID. I wanted to get your sense, Ms. Smallman, when we look at in the throne speech, we talked about doing and moving forward on a national action plan. And I wanted to know from your experience, the lessons learned and what can we do to better improve the action plan as we move forward.
Thank you for that. It's hugely important, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk about the violence aspect as well as the jobs aspect. The National Action Plan is actually a requirement that the UN put out for all countries, all member states. We're supposed to have a national action plan to address, respond to, and address and eliminate violence against women by 2015. So we're a little behind the times in terms of advancing on this, but we have taken many important steps towards it, including the the gender-based violence strategy for the federal government, as well as the funding that was rolled out in response to the crisis, the COVID crisis, which is welcome and necessary. But a national action plan would be a multi-jurisdictional vision with really targeted and specific timelines and actions to help to prevent and address violence against women. So it's really kind of nailing down the specific things that we have to do. On the labor side of things, we have actually a very clear roadmap in the new ILO convention C190, which is the Convention to eliminate violence and harassment in the world of work, which specifically requires actions to address gender-based violence at work, as well as domestic violence at work, which is something that we've been working very hard on in the Canadian Labour Congress for the last few years. And now, you know, in most jurisdictions in Canada, workers have access to paid domestic violence leave, which is a tremendous victory. But it's only the beginning, you know, and there's a lot that we can do, unions, employers, and governments together to actually operationalize the vision put out in the convention. And that's what I would like to be working with all levels of government on as we sort of create this vision of the National Action Plan.
And that's your time. Nous allons maintenant Madame Larouche.
We'll move on to Ms. Larouche for 6 minutes. Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses this morning. It's so interesting to hear what you have to say regarding women's place in the workforce. I'm convinced that we will have to relaunch the economy in a feminist way, because if the impacts have been worse for women, well, it's a question of mathematics. There have been more impacts on women during the pandemic. Well, we'll need more measures aimed at women to help them get back on their feet. I don't know where to start, but I'll start with Mr. McCready. I'd like to know, do women face specific challenges in terms of trying to access funding? We're talking more and more about putting measures in place just for women entrepreneurs, but how have they been specifically affected and impacted, and are there some programs that were not geared enough towards them? For example, many women owners of small businesses or businesses were not able to access the funding provided or the programs. And how could the federal government do better to ensure that women can get support in accessing that funding?
Thank you. I fully agree. I don't think that we have done enough to support small women entrepreneurs and businesses. Many of the programs were for medium-sized businesses, and I think equally important, but I think of those sole practitioners, people who have left, tried to upskill, tried to start their own company, whether they be a single practitioner or as an accountant, a consultant, whether they be someone who wants to start a physical business today. I don't think we have enough availability for women, especially single women, single parents, or women who are parents or single. I think the burden, when you look at it, has been difficult for everybody, but especially for that cohort. So I think, yes, if you look at the engine of an economy, and this economy, it is small businesses, and it's going to be increasingly about small business women owners. And so if we can ignite that part of it, to your earlier part about this feminist recovery, I think we will have a vibrant economy in the future. It will take a while, but the ability to have a small business community driven by women entrepreneurs will drive economic growth into the future. So I do think we have to do more to create that and enable those and support those women entrepreneurs, especially those who are single mothers in this.
It's Leah Nord from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. If I could just add just 1 minute to that, is that okay, MP?
Sure.
And I just want to add that at the Canadian Chamber, we're tracking for, you know, we've heard all the letters of the alphabet through this crisis, V, Ws, but we're tracking for K-shaped economies, right? And that's sectors, but it's also those who own. What we do know about female entrepreneurs as a generalization is they own smaller businesses. They have fewer employees or no employees. They're not always incorporated, which through the emergency programming has meant they're often not qualified. And that's why we've asked for in the first instance, track that data, to look at it, to look what's going on, and to adjust accordingly. We also know our council met last week, and that, you know, in addition to childcare, I know the government has taken steps, but the other issue is always and continues to be access to capital for women entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour cet ajout.
Thank you for that addition. It's very much appreciated. There are also other issues surrounding access to capital. So I'd like to hear Ms. Vicky Smallman regarding how to promote the female side of entrepreneurship and business, and has there been a different impact from COVID-19? You talked about the mental load and the psychological load. I mean, when you're working from home, there's so many things: education, managing, telework, in addition to all of the household chores. There are also other factors. What impacts do all these factors have on their professional lives? You talked about the importance of promoting women in non-traditional sectors, but how would it be important to have a law or legislation on equality? And there's still problems that women face.
Thanks. Well, I don't know if I am really the right person to talk about women entrepreneurs, as my organization represents, workers specifically. So, but I will say that the things that we are advocating in terms of the sort of key aspects of a feminist recovery include quality public services that would benefit all Canadians, whether they are small business owners, single individual entrepreneurs, workers, whether they're unionized or non-unionized. So when you have quality public services like childcare, like long-term care, like home care, these are the things that will actually help to relieve the burden of unpaid care work that women disproportionately share. I think we could start to think really about what are the things that our society needs to keep our economy running, right? Those things that lay across a surface. So when you look at public services, when you look at the care economy, they're both a source of jobs, but they're also an economic generator. They're the things that we need to be able to function as society and to care for those who are most vulnerable. And I think that that's the kind of investments that we would like to see, a conversation that we would like to see happen, why we're calling for a commission.
Very good. And now we'll go to Ms. Matheson for 6 minutes.
Thank you, and thanks to all the witnesses today. My first question is to both Ms. Wise and Ms. Smallman. And I actually, before I really get started, Ms. Wise, your 3M location, your facilities is in my riding, and so therefore quite a lot of the workers, your employees, they are my constituents. And I know I've heard from so many of them that they are truly overwhelmed right now, and a lot of that as parents is because of the unaffordability of childcare. Now you have said, and rightfully so, and I think that we all agree that the full participation of women in the workforce, it isn't just a women's issue. It's that economic issue. It's about that stability that we bring forward, and obviously childcare is a huge part of that. So I wouldn't mind hearing from both of you about yes, the provision of spaces is key, and how we move forward in terms of the creation of those childcare spaces, but also the affordability and what we can do to ensure that moving forward we get into far more affordable and maybe almost free a national universal childcare program.
Well, thank you for the question. If you don't mind, it's Penny. I'll go first to answer your question. So when we talk about childcare, and the Chamber has been talking about childcare, we've been thinking about it in terms of what are our concerns about, so we're thinking about it as national leadership, and how do we act urgently and quickly, whether it's about costs, whether it's about jurisdictional issues, options for parents, support for childcare workers. Those can end up being very longer term approaches that we need to take. And what we're really focused on right now is the urgency in moving as quickly as possible, so that what can be done, and some of the recommendations that what are those that can help make sure that we have the right capacity, or that we can support through the crisis and move to that longer term focus. So how do we ensure there's a redundant, maybe isn't the right word to use, but there are spaces to ensure that children are cared for, that we are making sure, I think I talked about it in the opening statement about making sure rapid testing, and that we can move as quickly as possible to make sure we have those safe starts. So there is a long-term collective discussion that needs to happen, parents and business that come into that, to build out what that long-term view looks like. But again, really focused on how do we deliver some of these short-term actions so that parents feel comfortable during the crisis and that they know they have spaces for their children, whether it's at school or within childcare. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I'm hoping that this committee has spoken with some of the childcare organizations like Childcare Now and the Childcare Resource and Research Unit. You know, we have a long relationship with these groups, and the childcare movement as a whole, along with their allies, has spent decades really coming up with a plan and a very solid vision for childcare in Canada, and there's a clear consensus about what needs to be done. They're also the best place to talk about what needs to happen in the short term to be able to address the crisis that that really has been exacerbated by this pandemic. I mean, the reality is that you know, and what's really challenging right now is it's shocking that at the time that we need quality childcare the most, we have childcare facilities shutting down because they don't have the resources that they need to be able to provide the care that parents are addressing. You know, this is very much you know, an issue that needs to be focused on ensuring that childcare facilities are able to have the resources. They don't rely overly on parent fees because parents cannot afford, you can't provide quality childcare on parent fees alone. There needs to be, you need to see this as a quality public service. So I do think that the plan to establish a secretariat, you know, that will move forward on both a recovery plan, but also put together the building blocks to build that long-term sustainable system that we can rely on. This is not going to be the last crisis of this nature, you know, and so we really need to be able to establish disaster-proof social services and public services like childcare.
And again, Ms. Smallman, so you talked a lot about the care economy. Long-term care is obviously right now so huge. My provincial counterpart in London Fanshawe actually put forward the Time to Care Act, and it was interesting that it's putting in the minimal standard of 4 hours of care per day per resident. And in order to meet that, they're estimating that the province of Ontario alone has to hire about 10,000 more care workers, nurses, PSWs. And we know, we've heard about the poor pay, the bad working conditions, the amount of time that these workers are expected to not only work but also give additionally, because so many of them are women and so many of them fall into that unpaid care time. So how could the federal government investing in that care economy, in universal affordable access to long-term care programming, how could that help that gender equality unbalanced situation and pressure on mainly women help?
Unfortunately,
oh no.
Time. So you'll have to wait for the answer for the second round. So we're going to start into the second round where we'll start with Nellie Shin for 5 minutes.
For the work that you do and for being with us today. Certainly we live in a time that is so fluid. We don't know when the lockdowns are going to tighten or loosen, and the repercussions of that on everyone, especially women who are vulnerable, is just daunting to think of. So my question comes from the perception that in times where there is uncertainty, there needs to be openness to transitions and going in different directions. So when we look at businesses, some of them have retooled into other forms. And then I'll get onto the issue of domestic violence if I get around to it. But the question I'd like to ask is, for women who want to retool their businesses to something else, what is out there that can help them? I know there's sometimes education is needed to get to that next place in revamping their business or their vision. And with that, if they have children and they are taking care of them, then obviously that needs care as well. Could you just speak into this question? I'd like to ask Penny and Mr. McCready. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It is a really important piece to think about retooling and reskilling for the future, and talks to one of the key recommendations that the Chamber and the Women's Advocacy Committee brought forward. And that is really about the need for job pivots and upskilling and reskilling. And you said it very eloquently that a lot of small businesses, women-owned businesses, or businesses have retooled. They've been incredibly resilient, and I think that this part about retooling, reskilling, upskilling, changing opportunities is part of the resiliency that we need to bring forward as part of the recovery as we move forward in Canada. So we did in the opening comments talk about that as one of our key recommendations about encouraging women to find pursue different education, pursue different careers, pursue high growth areas, or perhaps male dominated areas or other opportunities where there are growth, and to think about a wider aperture of what they can accomplish, and make sure that we're encouraging young women to pursue that, but also people who are currently in the workforce, what new opportunities can exist and how do we pivot and reskill on those.
And it's Leah from the Canadian Chamber. I'm just going to add very, very quickly that the Canadian Chamber partnered with StatsCan on what's called the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. We've been tracking since the beginning of the pandemic, and data will come out soon for September. But what the story is, and we can share exact data, and so can StatsCan, is the story of innovation throughout this for all businesses, but particularly diversity-owned businesses. And that's across, they track for women-owned businesses, Indigenous, immigrant, for those with disabilities. But the story for women from the start was because they had to shut down, right? Many of these sectors on day one were locked down, not essential services, disproportionately, again, affected. And they have been able to innovate, to go online, to use external communications. There's a whole series of data of how any number of businesses have innovated, and would encourage, as we move forward and longer term, to look at that data and to see, data driven, look at that and see what we can do to respond. And that would include consulting, having focus groups with women entrepreneurs as well. You want to know what they need, that's the best way to find out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I have just one minute to add to that, I think that, this is a great opportunity. And I, as we're all suffering through this, and women more so than anyone, if we can encourage and incent women to innovate and to take the risk to create new ventures, new jobs, it benefits the total economy. So it really comes down to how do we give grants to incent people to become and upskill, change, and drive that future growth of small business ownership. And at the same time, I think we have to help them with the childcare issues for many of them, whether that be through tax deductions for women who are business owners. And as we get through this, there are many ways and paths, but we have to be able to incent them to take that risk.
My next question is very similar to that, but applied to women who are experiencing domestic violence. It's very hard for a woman to leave their violent partner, and when they finally have the courage, it is our job, I believe, as a society to empower them to stay out of that cycle. So in the pandemic like that we're going through right now, where domestic violence is on the increase, what is a way that we can help women who are determined to leave their violent partners to transition into independence and find work or education that they need to transition out? Thank you.
It's a great question, but you're out of time. So now we're going to go to Ms. Hutchings for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today, and I want to thank you for your passion for what you do. It comes forth in every comment that you make. I was a woman entrepreneur many years ago, and it is hard. It is hard, and I was at it, like I said, 20 odd years ago. So when I see programs where Minister of Small Business is now topped up the Women Entrepreneurial Fund for $15 million. I wish some of that was available years ago to help women in need. And we all know that that childcare is huge. That's always been an issue. But we have created 40,000 new spaces, and with our $7.5 billion investment in early learning and childcare, that is going to make a difference. But the other thing I want to focus on, as the last speaker mentioned, is immigrant women. We know that national standards were promised in the throne speech, and they're going to go a long way for the safety and well-being of seniors. But we also need to help protect the workers who are mainly women, as we all know, and there are many that are significantly immigrant women. We know that there's a concern of how the pandemic is impacting immigrant women, and it's pushed the debate on adverse socioeconomic efforts. So we know that we all know that women have, experienced more job losses. But I read about a study done at Carleton University, which conducted an in-depth survey of 50 high-skilled immigrant women in July and August of this year, and it asked about their employment experience due to the pandemic to understand the gendered effects of the pandemic. And these women had post-secondary education, and their work experience was in a variety of professional fields. And 41 of 50 were negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, citing delays to the starts in their career, change of career due to layoffs or decreased availability. And we all know working from home, limited social support. So what can the federal government do to alleviate these impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on immigrant women from becoming long-term, and what recommendations do you have to keep immigrant women safe and protecting their economic security? We need them as we grow our economy back on our feet. So I'm going to put that out to all of you. Leah, Penny, Vicki, whoever wants to comment.
It's Leah from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and maybe I'll start with some opening comments about resolutions the Canadian Chamber has specifically to support not only immigrants through, for example, foreign credential recognition, through pathways to permanent residency, but also I'll give you an example from the Canadian Chamber, a resolution from last year that was in response to the refugee, specifically Syrian crisis. So if we take a look at language training, the importance of language training, we actually have a resolution that asks for increased childcare, recognizing that immigrant women, as they were on their pathways to, refugee women, Syrian women and refugees, were not getting the language training they needed because of the childcare support therein. So we do need to support not only immigrants writ large with foreign credential recognition, with labor market integration, but also prop up support specific to women. I know there's been some interesting work out of Ontario, and Vicki, I'll hand it over to you maybe to speak a bit more about that, about the pathways and the ladders for a lot of personal support workers, for example, to move into careers for which they're arguably qualified for or will gain quickly experience. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to flip the discussion a little bit, to the immigrant women that are who have been really impacted, but the low wage sort of workers who are maybe highly skilled, but those skills are not being recognized because the work itself is undervalued. So we're talking about care workers, and many of whom are coming in as with nursing qualifications and other qualifications, working as personal support workers or care workers, home care workers, but in conditions which make it very difficult to sustain. So we and that have also rendered these workers more vulnerable to not just job loss, but also to infection. We heard stories from the long-term care sector about workers that that ended up out of work because they had to confine their work to one facility. Right, and because they are forced to work part-time, because the standards of care are so low, the job quality is so poor, because the commitment to investing in decent jobs is not there in the industry. That's what we hope to accomplish with the Care Economy Commission, to look really at the quality of these jobs, and these jobs are overwhelmingly populated by racialized women and immigrant women. I think also
very good.
I want to jump in because my time is
your time is up actually. Now we're going to go to Madame LaRouche, 2.5.
Thank you very much. I will ask my question to Ms. Wise. With your colleagues, you've talked about daycare services. As a Quebec member, I can only tell you about the Quebec model, which have allowed many women to go back to work. I think that we will think about that when we discuss national daycare services. and we hope that Quebec will be able to keep the services it has. Now, earlier we talked about wage equity and the obstacles that women have in decisional jobs. What impact this has had on women decision makers. What measures could the government take to make sure that more women become decision makers? I would like to hear you on that.
Thank you for the question. The comments around just commenting on the Quebec model for daycare services, that certainly has come up in many of the discussions that we've had, and many great learnings as we think about the urgency of making sure we have the capacity to support daycare. In specifically into your question around decisional jobs and women advancing through the organization and making sure that we're continuing to see women taking on more important decisional roles. I think that there's been discussion around pay equity. There have been a number of elements about making sure that women are moving up and being promoted through the organization. And actually, when Kevin and I both started working on the Women's Advocacy Committee to talk about where we stood for women's advocacy or where we were taking that, the original plan was to think about how we get more women on boards and how we get more women in those higher positions. And obviously, given the urgency and the pandemic and what's happened, we've pivoted away from that and thought about what those urgency pieces are. But again, it is about leading by example. It's about making sure that we're taking things forward and that we're demonstrating in our own organizations in the business community how we start to accelerate. But for the moment, our focus is really to make sure we get women back into the workforce and get them on solid footing in order to be able to move forward, and then we can continue to develop and build from there.
All right, and now we're going to go to Ms. Matheson, final 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. And since I wasn't able to give any time to my answer from my previous question, I would like to afford that to Ms. Smallman. But also, maybe we can talk about, you had mentioned the ILO's Convention 190, but there certainly also exists 189, which was looking at protection of domestic workers and unpaid work, and what Canada can do to play a role as a leader on that in that regard as well.
Yeah, thank you. C-189 is a really important convention that I think as we look at, domestic workers, and particularly those that come here as migrants, have really slipped through the cracks of any sort of support and recovery response measures that have been established through this pandemic. There is a growing kind of organized force of caregivers in Canada that would be really interesting for this committee to connect with. I do think that ratifying the ILO convention would allow us to be able to put these workers on a path to permanent residency, but also address the conditions of work that they have, right? The wages, the way that they're treated by their employers, and I think that is actually a really important aspect of this committee's work. And on the
Do I have more time?
1 minute.
Oh, good.
I mean, I can expand on the long-term care, Lindsay, if you would like me to do that.
Absolutely, and certainly what that commission could also look at that you've put forward, that task force would focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's important for the sector-specific kind of initiatives in long-term care and childcare to continue. But what we really actually need is this kind of big picture analysis of who is providing care in this country, right? Who's doing the work, paid or unpaid? If they're paid jobs, what are the quality of those jobs? How is it connected to how the services are delivered? And, it's a model that really was advanced at the ILO. They have an excellent report on care work and care jobs, which I would highly recommend committee members look at. And I think taking that big picture look and analysis and coming up with a labor workforce, a workforce strategy is really important. The reality is that care work is the future of work. Care jobs are the one type of job that can never be automated, right? And so we can talk about getting women into leadership positions and all those things, but at the same time, we have to look at who is providing the care in this country.
Very
and
good.
Are we able to do that?
I'm really sorry. That's the end of our time for this panel. I told you I would try to be kind. I want to thank all of our witnesses. We could talk to you all day. You're all very experienced. So thank you for that. We're going to switch gears and we're going to go to our second panel, which is on long-term care. And today we have with us Tracy Smith Carrier, who is an associate professor at King's University College at Western University. And we also have Michelle Van Boozekam, who is with Protect People in Long-Term Care. So each of you will have 5 minutes and we'll start with Tracy.
Great. I'm Tracy. I'm an associate professor in the School of Social Work at King's University College at Western University. I'm presenting on behalf of the Coalition of Canada Basic Income Guarantee, Ontario Basic Income Network, and Basic Income Canada Network, as well as the Youth Network. Despite Canada's progress on gender equity, disparities remain, as we've already heard, that disproportionately disadvantage women. Relative to men, women are more likely to experience poverty, shoulder a greater share of caring and emotional labor, be precariously employed in minimum wage jobs, receive less in pension and contributory programs, experience gender-based violence and abuse. Multiple intersections occupied by women based on age, race, gender, disability, and so forth compound disadvantage and lead to increasingly more harmful health, social, and economic outcomes. The inequities women experience have only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of health, the World Health Organization estimates that 70% of health and social service providers worldwide are women. These women largely represent frontline workers with the greatest exposure to the deadly virus. Women have also experienced poorer mental health outcomes and higher stress levels than men since the onset of COVID-19. Thinking of employment, more than half of women in Canada are employed in the 5 C's: caring, clerical, catering, cashiering, and cleaning work. Given that a high proportion of women-dominated jobs reside in the low-wage retail and service sectors, women have experienced job loss at twice the rate of men in the working-age population. Countless others have seen their working hours significantly reduced during this period. The pandemic has exacerbated the gender division of labor. In 1989, Arlie Hochschild described the burden of the second shift, whereby women were expected to perform both paid and unpaid domestic, emotional, and caregiving labor. Now, many women are finding themselves similarly in a third shift, as instructors to their school-aged children in need of homeschooling or tutoring. The prevalence of poverty among Black, Indigenous, women of color, newcomer women, and women with disabilities is particularly high. As well as being feminized, frontline work is racialized, with up to 80% of women working as aides in long-term care homes in Montreal being Black. Ongoing systemic inequalities increase vulnerability of Indigenous families living on reserves due to overcrowded housing and the lack of clean drinking water and water for regular hand washing, giving Indigenous peoples, particularly Indigenous women, greater exposure to COVID-19 than their non-Indigenous counterparts. COVID-19 has exposed and exacerbated existing inequities in addition to creating new ones. A strong economic recovery plan must recognize women's disproportionate vulnerability to financial and health shocks. A basic income is a regular payment made through the tax system to ensure that everyone has income security. The principles of basic income include A, adequacy. It's enough money to live on. Autonomy, it offers people more choices. Dignity, there's no stigma attached. Equality of opportunity, it offers opportunities for everyone. Non-conditionality, it is administered with no strings attached. Universality of access, anyone who needs it gets it. A basic income ensures that everyone has the right to an adequate standard of living. Let's consider the potential impacts of a basic income on women. First, employment. Offered as an adequate, non-conditional individual benefit, not at the household level, a basic income could enable women's economic independence. Women would have greater choice to further their education or training, to start a business, to stay home, to raise a family, to leave a toxic job or an unsafe job for a better one. A basic income could thus give women more bargaining power in employment, offer more flexibility in determining their hours of work with resources to pay public and/or private childcare providers, and also assign recognition to paid work not as a payment for care work, but as a universal support for care work, providing everyone with a more effective opportunity to engage in it. In terms of housing, a basic income would ensure mothers access to adequate housing options and would equip them with the financial means to improve their housing prospects. In relation to intimate partner violence, gender-based violence is on the rise due to COVID-19 related stressors. We know that access to finances is one of the most significant factors determining whether a woman stays or leaves an abusive relationship. A basic income would provide more choice for women if and when fleeing intimate partner violence. Now considering health and mental health, income is the single most important determinant of health. The lack of it results in a multitude of adverse health consequences. Research shows a strong connection between maternal and child health outcomes. Basic income would improve the health and well-being of the mother and child, including the food security of the family. The mental
I'm sorry, that's your 5 minutes. We'll get the rest of it in questions.
Sounds
now
good.
We'll go to Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the invitation to speak with you today. I am a co-founder of Protect People in Long-Term Care, an ad hoc citizens group formed in early April in an effort to propel our political leaders to take decisive action to address the unfolding crisis in long-term care. On April 7th, we launched a petition asking for emergency funding, a coordinated national strategy, and the implementation of shared standards of care. To date, our petition has garnered over 77,000 signatures from every province and territory in Canada. I'd like to underscore that those of us with loved ones in long-term care saw this tragedy coming. The systemic gaps and failures are something we are intimately familiar with. We saw what happened in Spain and Italy in February, and we knew what was coming our way. When families and volunteers were locked out on March 13th in many parts of the country, we knew that staff who were already overstretched would quickly become overwhelmed. We couldn't understand why staff were having to fight to get access to PPE. And we watched in anguish and horror as outbreak after outbreak was announced. Yet LTCs in many jurisdictions were not being prioritized by their public health authorities for testing to ensure the rapid assessment and cohorting of residents. This was the case in my own parents' LTC in Brampton, Ontario, which had to wait an agonizing 9 days after their first positive case until their public health authority would finally give them access to testing for all residents. In their LTC, over 50% of residents were infected, almost 60% of staff. 12 died, including 2 staff. And then staffing levels were so depleted by COVID that the military had to be called in. Canada has catastrophically failed the residents and workers in long-term care, and women have disproportionately shouldered the impacts of a tragedy that could and should have been avoided. I'm speaking of the workers, the majority of them racialized women, as we've heard today, whose work is undervalued and underpaid. As we know, understaffing is a chronic gap in this sector, an issue that has been flagged for decades. In addition, many employers, especially those working in the for-profit spectrum, refuse to offer full-time work so they can avoid paying benefits. This forces low-wage staff to juggle shifts at various locations to make ends meet. The individuals, mainly women, doing this work have been put in an impossible situation and are left overstretched and often ill-equipped to care for vulnerable residents. They, in turn, have found themselves disproportionately exposed to the virus and at risk of bringing it home to their loved ones. I'm also speaking about the family members and volunteers, again, overwhelmingly women, whose unpaid labor in normal times is the glue that holds this broken system together. Hundreds of us essential caregivers were locked out in mid-March. We were forcibly separated from our fragile and vulnerable loved ones, and in many cases, we're not able to get regular updates. In the worst cases, loved ones died alone with no family member present. Families and workers alike will be living with the trauma caused by this devastation for the rest of our lives. And here we are now in a second wave. Over 10,000 people in Canada have lost their lives to COVID-19. 80% of them were living in long-term care, the worst record in all OECD countries. The root problems have been documented in study upon study over decades. Chronic understaffing, poor labor practices, and absence of shared standards of care, outdated infrastructure, deregulation, lack of accountability. To quote Doris Grinspoon from the RNAO, it is disheartening, exhausting, and expensive to continue to study problems that are known and understood, and where the missing factor is the political will to act decisively. In the throne speech, the federal government made a commitment to national standards for long-term care. Yet almost 6 weeks later, details and a timeline have not been shared. With the number of cases on the rise again and dozens of homes in outbreak across the country, it is imperative that all levels of government come together and that a timeline and action plan are put into place. The solutions are known.
I'm sorry, that's your time.
Okay.
We'll get the rest in the questions. We're going to start our first round with Ms. Wong for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then here again, I would like to thank all the witnesses. In fact, for the two panels there, some really interactions which could be looked at holistically. As I mentioned before, I've visited many long-term cares. I've been delivering masks to the long-term care workers, and definitely, as an immigrant woman myself, I definitely will, notice all the challenges to people of minority, especially women. Now, my question is, what steps could have been taken, from the government side to ensure improved health outcomes in the long-term care home, since we are now already in the second, or for some, the third wave? I'm now going to ask Ms. Van Busekom, excuse me for mispronouncing your name, to address this very important issue, please. And I applaud your organization.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the question. I think in the immediate term, the issue requiring immediate attention is staffing and staff ratios. And I think in the previous panel, the call for a minimum of 4 hours one-on-one care per day, which has been an ask that's been around for a very long time, was flagged. Supporting the staff with increased staff ratios, having the right ratios of registered nurse, personal care workers, resident assistants is essential. And also those wages, we talked about it before, Vicki spoke to it so eloquently. This work is skilled work, but it's undervalued. People seem to think that, it's nothing to take care of a person with dementia. It is hard work to understand the needs of that person, how to communicate with that person. As a society, we have to value that work. We have to pay for that work, give people permanent jobs. That's the place to start. A great study was written by the Royal Society of Canada. Pat Armstrong was part of that. She was here last week. The solutions are mapped out, and it's women like Pat and Carol Easterbrook who've done the work. It's there. The heavy lifting done once again by women is there. But what we need is for the decision makers, provinces, federal government, to come together with the experts and act now before it's too late.
Thank you. And then my next question is also to ask, Ms. Busekom to address. You did mention about, the fact that caregivers, either unpaid or paid jobs, are definitely themselves need caring. So it's caring for the carers, whether it's in paid or paid jobs. I think we have to look at both sides. since right now, some people are losing confidence in the long-term care. So they are now having their own seniors at home and they are caring for them. And these caregivers who are unpaid actually need a lot of support. In England, they did have a very good, and they still do, system to, this association like Caring for the Carers, and the employers are also asked to help to support these workers. So looking at the holistic picture, what would you recommend that our government should have done?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think first off, it's essential that the workers in the long-term cares be properly supported. Caregiver burnout is huge. It's the reason my mother went into long-term care, because my father is a man, but there's men who do this work as well, was becoming burnt out. Some people would like to keep their loved ones at home. And because of COVID, out of guilt, many people have taken their loved one out of their long-term care, and they quickly get overwhelmed. Both of my parents are in long-term care. My mom has advanced dementia. My dad has many complex issues. They require a community of care. Long-term care is the right solution for them. If I was trying to do that at home, I would become totally overwhelmed. So we need the supports in place. If people are going to care for someone at home, it's not just about money. It's about having support workers who are coming into the home to make sure that they are not trying to do everything, because their mental health is going to suffer and their quality of life is going to suffer as a result. But we need to look at it holistically, to your point, and have those options for people to remain in home longer, but make sure that those caregivers at home are being given the supports that they need to make that feasible, and for them not to have to sacrifice their career and other things in order to be able to offer a dignified quality of life to their loved one.
All right. And in the interest of time, I'm going to chop everybody to 5 minutes. So we're going to go next to Ms. Zahid and Ms. Sidhu, who are splitting their time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank both the witnesses for appearing before the committee today. Thanks a lot, and your input is really very important. And I will be sharing my time with Ms. Sidhu. My question is, my first question is for Ms. Smith-Career. Thank you for all the work which you have done in regards to the basic income. I hear from my constituents, many women in my riding, and especially the racialized women and the new immigrant women, they are mostly working on hourly wages with no paid benefits because they are taking care of their families and they have to support them. Many are single parents who are working hard to put food on the table. They don't get any opportunity to upgrade their skills to get more competitive jobs where they can succeed in their careers. Do you have any evidence, any previous examples, and what do you think that how basic income would be able to help women who are working at low-level jobs?
Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. It's actually one of the questions that we're often asked is this a whole notion of a work disincentive? Are people going to just stop working if they get money? And it's an interesting question because there is a slight reduction in North American experiments anyways, a slight reduction in work participation, but it's largely due to things that we would think are actually helpful. So because basic income provides a way for people to decide whether they want to stay at home a little bit to take care of children, whether they want to leave their job and go to another job, whether they want to go on and do more education, further their training, it allows all of those options to be on the table for them. And so, so that has, actually caused a slight or very modest reduction in, for example, in the Minkum experiment in the 1970s, where they saw a slight reduction. And it had to do with people going back to school to further their skills, and also with mothers who wanted to stay at home for a little bit to raise their babies. At the time, they only had four weeks in mat leave, so they really wanted to spend a little bit more than a month with their kids. So some of those folks took their basic income lived, stayed at home with those kids, and when they grew, were able to get back into the workforce. But it really does provide much more opportunities for women to pursue what it is that they want to do, and even to get out of toxic, non-safe jobs, and have some bargaining power to be able to say, no, I'm going to go to a better job because I can do that.
All right.
Thank you. I will pass it on to Ms. Sidhu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sama, sharing time with me. And thank you all the witnesses for being here today and your advocacy on the changes we need in a long-term care homes. I would like to recognize all staff and the CAF members who helped residents in long-term care in Quebec and Ontario. Michelle, as a resident of Brampton South, I thank you for offering your personal experiences within long-term care system. As we all know, your mom and dad reside in the same long-term care home. The federal government has committed to working with the provinces and while respecting provincial jurisdictions, establishing national standard for long-term care. What would you like to see in those national standards, specifically what standards need to be made for women in long-term care?
Thank you very much, MP Sidhu, for the opportunity and for the question. I think immediately what we need to see, first we need a timeline and we need an action plan. We need the federal government and the provinces and territories and the incredible expertise of this subject around the same table. Staffing we know is key, and those staff ratios that I spoke about already. We need fair wages within this sector. Within the context of COVID, we need testing priority for LTCs in outbreak, priority cohorting. That's why things got really bad in my parents' LTC, and it's still happening now. We need a maximum of 2 people per room. That could be implemented immediately. And we need universal access for the essential caregivers because that's very uneven across the country. And then longer term, of course, we need norms and standards in terms of care and also in terms of training. We need norms in terms of infrastructure. Accountability is key. I'm sure you all saw the report on Marketplace on CBC. Horrifying, absolutely horrifying.
All right, I'm sorry, that's the time for that question. Now, Madame Larouche, 5 minutes.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
5 minutes for Ms. Larouche. Yes, thank you very much to the witnesses. It was very interesting to hear what you had to say regarding all these topics. I'm the critic for status of women and more, so this is very interesting to me. I want to highlight that this is currently National Caregivers Week, and it's especially women and unpaid women who are doing this work. So I wish them a good day, their day, and we have to look at what we can do to help them. I want to come back to long-term care homes, and once again in Quebec with the CHSLDs, as we call them. We have a good system. I want to highlight the work done by the Jonquière Center, but also the Granby Support Center. And it provides support to caregivers and does excellent work. To support our long-term care centers and our caregivers, we need more. The health transfers were reduced from 50% to 20%. There was a reduction. Should we increase that to 35%? That would give the provinces the way to have better resources to provide better salaries to the caregivers. I want to talk about the guardian angels, often immigrant women during the pandemic. It's time that we give back to Quebec the means to provide proper services and supports, and what can we do to provide better PPE, rapid tests, and so on, and how to go beyond national norms to improve care. I'd like to hear from Ms. Van Bruzekom on this.
Well, you're not going to like this, but I am a firm believer in national standards, and I think long-term care should come under the Canada Health Act. And I think the provinces and the federal government have to get past all of this jurisdictional bickering, and they have to put human lives at the center. For God's sake, put human lives at the center of this. Work together. You can all agree on national standards that are good for everyone so that someone in Chicoutimi and Dawson City get the same standard of care. And of course, everyone will implement it in their own way because everyone, there's specificities around their regions and their needs. But what is wrong with national standards? And it's this bickering that is stopping us. And look how many people died in Quebec. Look how many people died in Ontario. There will be more of that if you guys can't come together and work this out. I'm counting on you guys, and so are the 77,000 who signed our petition, and many.
Je vous remercie beaucoup pour votre réponse qui a le mérite.
Thank you for your response, which is very honest. However, in Quebec and Ontario, I truly believe that people are at the center of the efforts, and it comes back to a question of adequate funding. Now, I'd like to come back to the universal basic income, which could be a source of conflict again between the federal level and Quebec. Would there be standards? How long would it take to get this program in place?
Well, we can see the ability of the government to respond quickly in the wake of the pandemic by providing emergency benefits tells us that we can act swiftly to ensure a prosperous future for all. So sort of building on CERB and the Canada Recovery Benefit that offered vital supports for individuals and families, these can become useful platforms for the launch of a permanent program that will provide necessary security and stability post-COVID. We know that people behave differently if they know that the income assistance that they're receiving is only temporary. With a permanent basic income, people and women in particular will be better equipped to make important decisions that have long-term implications for them and their families, whether it be to go back to school, start a business, or find new work opportunities. So there's lots of opportunities for us to work together to achieve this goal. It is an explicitly feminist policy featuring intersectionality and GBA plus analysis.
Very good. And now we'll go to Ms. Matheson. 5 minutes.
Thank you. So, Ms. Smith-Carrier, you talked about the women that are highly impacted by COVID, obviously, and we've heard, of course, of the 5 C's. These are often women working low-wage jobs, precarious employment. They don't have supports, benefits, things like access to childcare in the same way. And there's very much a juxtaposition between or comparison between that and people living off of social assistance programs that currently exist, and people are forced to live on the very bare minimum and in such poverty that they don't have that choice, and those seem to be the ways that we're going about it at this time. So I'd like for you to expand on how the guaranteed basic income breaks that cycle of poverty, and what can actually be saved in terms of this highly policed and bureaucratic financial supports and the limited supports that we currently see in the system. What can be saved through that?
It's a great question, and yeah, I don't know that we would necessarily need to have a social assistance system. We could redirect those resources. There's lots of other places that we could, use those workers. Caseworkers could be put into housing, into childcare, into to long-term care. All the issues that we've been talking about today. But yeah, having the money go directly to the people as opposed to the systems that monitor people is probably the better way to go. And it would ultimately end poverty. If a basic income was offered at a level that was adequate, it would eliminate poverty. And so a lot of the issues that you raised in terms of the depth of poverty, the stigma, the shame that are attached to some of those programs, they just would no longer exist. And people would have the income that could act as a buffer when they're in between jobs, when they're deciding to start a new business or go back to do more education and training. So yeah, there's a lot of research now that has been developed on research on cash transfer programs, basic income pilot programs, So I think there's a wealth of literature that we could look at in terms of how to do this and how to do it well.
Ms. Bosacom, you spoke about, of course, national standards and the need for whether, no matter where you live, no matter who you are in Canada, that there be that certain level. And of course, I had spoken before about my provincial colleagues' push for the Time to Care Act of the 4 hours per resident in care per day. What do you believe that ultimately our separation of long-term care is inappropriate, and that it should actually be pulled under something like the Canada Health Act to ensure that there is that equality of care?
Thank you for the question. And yes, I do. I think ultimately long-term care should come under the Canada Health Act. When the infrastructure for Canada's long-term care system was put into place, people weren't living as long. When you look at who's in long-term care now, you have so many people in their 80s and 90s. I think the percentage is 85% suffer from some form of dementia. So these are people with really complex needs, and their medical needs. It's not just about kind of assisted living kind of context. These are medical needs, and this should fall under the Canada Long-Term Act. And I just want to say that there's a quality to these lives, because sometimes people are scared of old age, of dementia, and they feel there's not a quality to these lives. There is a quality and a beauty to them. And as a society, we have a responsibility to support our most vulnerable citizens, and we're really failing them. But yes, that's how I feel we should ultimately address it, by bringing it under the Canada Health Act.
Thank you so much. We're out of time for our panel today, but I want to thank our witnesses. Your heartfelt testimony has really helped us out. For the rest of the members, if you know, we're going to go in camera. So that means you have to log off this Zoom session, log into the next Zoom session with the extra password that was sent to you, and we'll see you there right away.
Thank you.
you.